No Sam again. No Rachel again. No Drew. Anybody see Drew McDaniel? All right, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, not going to be much notes today, but we need your undivided attention. It's going to be, if you're really paying attention, it's going to be kind of a heavy day. And if you're not paying attention, you're going to think, well, that wasn't really, that was kind of a waste of time. This is not going to be a waste of time if you're really thinking. We shouldn't walk out of here like in fear, because we don't have a spirit of fear. We're constantly trying to educate ourselves, make sure we're aware of what's going on in our society at this time, because we are called to be salt and light, correct? So, while the video that we're going to watch is older, it's very informative about how a society such as the United States, who, by the way, the United States is like the, if you didn't know this, I think you already know this, when it comes to the anti-Christian, anti-freedom, when it comes to the Marxist communist world, the biggest prize is the United States. Any ideology outside of Christianity or capitalist free market economics, the biggest prize for those ideologies is obviously the United States, right? We're the most prosperous free country in the history of the world. We're the greatest consumers in the world. If you can permeate, if you can get through to the United States and conquer them intellectually, indeed spiritually, well then you're going to be able to control the world. It was attempted by the Soviet Union after World War II, and you know of the thing called the Cold War. What's happening in your generation, using the same kind of psychological manipulation, but to a greater degree, is being used by the Chinese. You can listen, or you can not listen and resist it and live in ignorance. But if you do, you're putting not only your own future at risk, you're putting your, if you have family that you're going to have. I'm not trying to, I don't mean to oversell it and make you scared, to make you aware. This is the battle we're in. If you don't know that there's a war on Christianity, well then you're not paying attention in America. If you don't know around the world that there's a war on Christianity and there's a war on the American system, then you're just not paying attention. And if you're not paying attention, how are you going to change it? And as he's going to explain, if I don't wake up and do what I do passionately every day, and praise the Lord, there would be more people like me that would have this and not just kind of go through the motions, I guess, of teaching, and you don't buy it, then it's not going to change. We're going to continue down the road that we're on and that we've been on. And now it's been ramped up with the kind of media that's at the disposal of people like we're going to watch today. Because these ideas of Marxism, communism, and socialism, while we don't call ourselves that country, a lot of these ideas have been bought into. And they have been made part of the fabric of our governance and our economy. And these people play what's called the long game. They believe that in the end, they will reach their communist utopian state worldwide. And they're willing to play the long game and be patient and do it through education and or indoctrination, mass indoctrination of people. What you're going to see, you're going to watch a video of a former KGB. If you don't know what KGB is, that would be the equivalent to, say, the United States CIA. people that are highly trained in manipulation. And this is an old video, but we're going to relate it to what the Soviet Union was trying to do. Thankfully, we had a temporary pause in their efforts by Ronald Reagan. I don't say that because, oh yeah, Mr. Franklin likes Ronald Reagan. No, it was the truth. Because the speech that he's given or this interview this guy's given is in 1984. In 1984 election, Ronald Reagan won 49-1. The only state he didn't win was the state that his opponent was a citizen of. Otherwise, he would have won, get this, he would have won all 50 states. That's unthinkable in your world right now. Because for whatever reason, whatever you think he had, great communicator, the idea that he was able to take a country that was way down here morale-wise, coming out of Vietnam, we're in the midst of the Cold War, the economy is in the tank with Jimmy Carter, and somehow Ronald Reagan, just by his use of words and the way he communicated, was able to raise the morality of the whole country, albeit temporarily, through the 80s into the 90s, and then we started going the other way again because we lost that person, that leader. We talk about so much in history that's so vital. But before we do that, just so you're clear again, to reiterate, we use Marxism, communism, and socialism interchangeably often. Marxism is named after Karl Marx. These are his ideas about there should be no private property. Private property is what leads to some people having power over the others. Everything should be of public use. And eventually we'll get to the point, if we educate everybody well enough, we'll get to the point where there will be not even a need for a state. We will be classless and stateless. But in the meantime, we have to use the power of the state to get people to all buy into these ideas we have of this utopian world, which we would call what? When we read novels like 1984, we call those dystopian novels, right? To them, that's utopia, where you strip away everybody's ideas of these fanciful ideas of individual liberty, and you get them all to buy into the communal way of thinking. Socialism is the economic means to get there. So a communist country is going to use the economics of socialism where the means of production are owned by the government, not by people. So, having set that up, the next thing on here is the video. This video is a former KGB, high-up KGB agent that, he doesn't explain how he saw the light, how it came to be that he defected and became an agent, not necessarily an official agent of the United States, but a person that was speaking to anyone that would listen in the 1980s about the extent that the Soviets were going to mentally mass manipulate a people by using, you'll notice it when you hear him talk, he doesn't say it exactly like I do, using media, education, entertainment, whatever means that were necessary. By the way, before we start this, back then, in 1984, cable was just a new thing. So if you go back to when he was really being an operative for the Soviets in the 60s and 70s, there were 4 basic channels on TV: CBS, NBC, ABC, and PBS. And then you had radio, which was much more popular, and you had newspapers. While you're watching it, I might stop it once in a while to shake your conscience and get you to see that while it seems the Soviet Union isn't so much the evil empire anymore, and we see China perhaps as the new evil empire, hopefully you'll be able to see why what you take as just fun is purposeful, deliberate manipulation. And if you don't, listen, they had 4 channels. What do they have at their disposal today to mass manipulate the psyche of a country, such as the United States, which is a big prize? So when you hear old fuddy-duddies like me, who, TikTok, oh, blah, blah, it's just fun. If you think that, that's exactly what they want you to think. if you don't think that the mental manipulation going on through avenues like TikTok and all the other social media, you don't think they have algorithms that determine what information they're putting out and what isn't? He's not going to use the word cancel in the interview. But he's going to talk about dissidents, people that go against what is being put out there. Someone like me, that if I post something, the chances that I'm going to get shadow banned, canceled, or even have the FBI show up at my door. There's a new movie out, put out last Monday, called Police State. It's real. We don't think it's real because it's not happening to you yet. There's real Americans, just normal, average Americans. Grandma in jail because she put out there that she supported the idea that, hey, the 2020 election wasn't exactly right. It's not meant to scare you. It's meant to, as I always say, educate you. You're adults now. How's it going to change if you guys don't change it? How's it going to change if there's not more people like me that are passionately trying to educate you to what's going on? First and foremost, as Christians, to understand there's a war on Christianity. But then it goes along with that. Where else are you going to find freedom of religion to a greater extent than in these United States? There's nowhere else to go. As Reagan said, we're the last bastion of freedom. You don't go anywhere from here. If the United States goes, that's it. They win. And it's not hopeless. If it was hopeless, I wouldn't bother. Honestly, from my own personal perspective, I'm only one of 330 million people. But if I thought it was hopeless, why would I even be doing this? I can do so many other things for the same amount of money. It's not hopeless. You're not hopeless. But we are if we're apathetic, if we keep buying into it, if we don't understand what they're trying to do and know that we have to fight against it. So, enough of me. It's going to be hard to understand him because he's got the accent. But please listen to what he's saying. Not this guy. So, unfortunately, it's only 14 minutes. You're not going to be able to understand exactly how they did it. But they did it. And they did it at a time, I said, with 4 TV channels. What do they have at their disposal today? At your fingertips all the time. Come on, you're educated enough to know that there's things called algorithms that are put into these social media apps. And it might seem innocent, but there's people that are working very hard to manipulate the psyche of a people.
Well, you spoke several times before about ideological subversion. That is a phrase that I'm afraid some Americans don't fully understand. When the Soviets used the phrase ideological subversion, what do they mean by it?
Ideological subversion is the process which is legitimate, overt, and open. You can see it with your own eyes. All you have to do, all American mass media has to do, is to unplug their bananas from their ears, open up their eyes, and they can see it. There is no mystery. There is nothing to do with espionage. I know that espionage intelligence gathering looks more romantic. It sells more deodorants through the advertising, probably. That's why your Hollywood producers are so crazy about James Bond type of thrillers. But then
just to make sure you're paying attention and not looking at the 70s, early 80s fashion, and that's capturing your attention. But what he's saying is that people look at it like, oh, the Soviets are spying on us, and that's like, we can make James Bond movies, and when he says sell deodorants because we can have commercialization of, hey, the Cold War. He's saying, no, you're not. You have to open your eyes and take the bananas out of your ears, and it would be so obvious to you, but it's not. And I would submit the reason it's not is because they've been so successful at infiltrating media, education, government, and entertainment that those people aren't needing to take the scales off their eyes or the bananas out of their ears. They're actually complicit. They've subverted a whole generation of people to be their useful idiots to not only not see it, but to support all the information.
Reality, the main emphasis of the KGB is not in the area of intelligence at all. According to my opinion and opinion of many defectors of my caliber, only about 15% of time, money, and manpower is spent on espionage as such. The other 85% is a slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The result you can see, most of the people who graduated in the 60s, dropouts or half-baked intellectuals, are now occupying the positions of power in the government, civil service, business, mass media, educational system. You are stuck with them. You cannot get rid of them. They are contaminated. They are programmed to think and react to certain stimuli in a certain pattern. You cannot change their mind.
He doesn't use the term useful idiots in this interview, but soft-headed, duped, half-baked intellectuals that they were able to get into, he named them, media, education, government bureaucracy, entertainment, to perpetrate. And one of the things he said that is really rampant now is this assault on you. How do you even defend the truth? With there's so many mixed messages. This is misinformation. That's misinformation. You're just in a state of confusion. How much stronger is it now, 1 generation later, with all the technology at your fingertips? It's not an accident. It's not an accident that you feel this way, that you think this way, that you're so, even in this setting, with your teacher so passionately trying to get you to see the truth, that some of you are like, didn't happen by accident.
Even if you expose them to authentic information, even if you prove that white is white and black is black, you still cannot change the basic perception and the logic of behavior. In other words, these people, the process of demoralization is complete and irreversible. To get rid of society of these people, you need another 20 or 15 years to educate a new generation of patriotically minded and common sense people who would be acting in favor and in the interests of the United.
That generation that's in the colleges right now teaching, say they're my age, you can't change. There's nothing you can do. They've been demoralized so much to the point that America stinks, that America's awful, that Christianity is irrelevant. You could show them all the proof in the world. It's not going to change their mind. That's how deep the demoralization is. And what he's trying to tell you is it didn't just kind of happen in a vacuum. There were people that were involved in manipulating people through the messaging in media and education. Don't take it from me. This is a guy that was doing it.
States society.
And yet these people have been programmed and, as you say, in place, and who are favorable to an opening with the Soviet concept. These are the very people who would be marked for extermination in this country?
Most of them, yes. Simply because the psychological shock when they will see in future what the beautiful society of equality and social justice means in practice, obviously they will revolt. They will be very unhappy, frustrated people. And the Marxist-Leninist regime does not tolerate these people. Obviously they will join the links of dissenters, dissidents. Unlike in present United States, there will be no place for dissent in future Marxist-Leninist America. Here you can get popular like Daniel Ellsberg and filthy rich like Jane Fonda for being dissident, for criticizing your Pentagon. In future, these people will be simply squashed like cockroaches. Nobody is going to pay them nothing for their beautiful, noble ideas of equality. This they don't understand, and it will be a greatest shock for them, of course. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years. Actually, it's overfulfilled because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes his balls, then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization. So basically America is stuck with demoralization, and unless, even if you start right now, here, this minute, you start educating new generation of Americans, it will still take you 15 to 20 years to turn the tide of ideological perception of reality back to normalcy and patriotism. The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, it doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation, what matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. And you can see it quite clearly that in some areas, in such sensitive areas as defense and economy, the influence of Marxist-Leninist ideas in the United States is absolutely fantastic. I could never believe it 14 years ago when I landed in this part of the world that the process will go that fast. The next stage, of course, is crisis. It may take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, "Now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized." This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis, to promise people all kind of goodies and the paradise on earth, to destabilize your economy, to eliminate the principle of free market competition, and to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C., with benevolent dictators like Walter Mondale, who will promise law.
See, people think that I'm extreme when I would say things like, hey, there's this TV show called Big Brother. Well, I would never watch that for 1 second. You know why? Because they're using it. It's like gaslighting. It's like we have this concept of Big Brother, the government watching you and imposing on your freedoms, and then we'll like in your face, call show Big Brother. Oh, it's just entertainment. Oh, don't be so extreme. What are you so worried about? You know what gaslighting means? When you just put something right out there in someone's face, he's telling you that's what they do. You know, so then, oh, those are just extremists. Dissidents like me, extremists, need to be canceled. It's just a TV show. It's just a movie. That's it.
Lots of things, never mind whether the promises are fulfillable or not. He will go to Moscow to kiss the bottoms of new generation of Soviet assassins. Never mind, he will create false illusions that the situation is under control. Situation is not under control. Situation is disgustingly out of control. Most of the American politicians, media and educational system trains another generation of people who think they are living at a peacetime. False. United States is in a state of war, undeclared total war against the basic principles and the foundations of this system. And the initiator of this war is not Comrade Andropov, of course. It's the system. However ridiculous it may sound, the world communist system or the world communist conspiracy, whether I scare some people or not, I don't give a hoot. If you are not scared by now, nothing can scare you. But you don't have to be paranoid about it. What actually happens now, that unlike myself, you have literally several years to live on unless the United States wake up. The time bomb is ticking with every second. The disaster is coming closer and closer. Unlike myself, you will have nowhere to defect to. Unless you want to live in Antarctica with penguins. This is it. This is the last country of freedom and possibility.
Okay, so what do we do? What is your recommendation to the American people?
Well, the immediate thing that comes to my mind is, of course, there must be a very strong national effort to educate people in the spirit of real patriotism, number one. Number two, to explain them the real danger of socialist, communist, whatever, welfare state, big brother government. If people will fail to grasp the impending danger of that development, nothing ever can help the United States. You may kiss goodbye to your freedom, including freedoms to homosexuals, to prison inmate. All this freedom will vanish, evaporating in 5 seconds, including your precious lives. The second thing...
Speaking of mass manipulation, whether or not this was the Soviets doing it, whoever, the war on Christianity. Get the irony of this that I saw last night and a little bit this morning listening to. On one side of the street, you have a people calling themselves Queers for Palestine. They're all over college campuses and they're having these big protests against the state of Israel, and they're waving their banners and they're called Queers for Palestine, right? The next soundbite I hear is one of the leaders of Iran, who sponsors the terrorism, Hezbollah and Hamas in Israel, passionately screaming about how any Islamic state would in no way, not just not tolerate homosexual behavior, talking about any support of homosexual behavior. Are you picking up what I'm saying? You've got these people calling themselves Queers for Palestine on one side of the street, supporting a people on the other side of the street that are telling you right to your face that if you support any kind of that sexual perversion, not only are you not allowed to do it, you'll be killed. They throw them off cliffs. If that's not mass psychosis, I don't know what is. A group of people that have been duped so badly in this psychological warfare, they're protesting on the side of the people that literally throw them off cliffs if they had control. That doesn't tell you how real it is? And in the American media, education, government, and entertainment industries, these people that are constantly propping up communism, Marxism, without the knowledge of if it actually goes through, they're one of the first people to go too.
The moment at least part of the United States population is convinced that the danger is real, they have to force their government. And I'm not talking about sending letters, signing petitions, and all this beautiful, noble activity. I'm talking about forcing the United States government to stop aiding communism. Because there is no other problem more burning and urgent than to stop the Soviet military-industrial complex from destroying whatever is left of the free world. And
so, like I mentioned before I put it on there, whether you think I'm doing it just because I somehow have this fanaticism for President Reagan, which I don't, I know it's false too. Reagan put a temporary halt to it. He literally somehow was able to capture the country's psyche, at least temporarily through the 80s, to bring back an incredible sense of patriotism, to fight through all of this. And then when he was gone, there was no one to pick up that mantle to continue it. Well, not immediately, we had George H.W. Bush, who didn't, even though he rode on Reagan's coattails, didn't continue with Reagan's optimism and love for the American system and understand what we were up against. And then we went right into Clinton. And Clinton was, I mean, if I could take you back to the 1992 campaign and the knowledge that didn't get out, like a lot of knowledge doesn't get out today, where Clinton spent his college years over in England going on these trips to the Soviet Union and denigrating the United States on foreign soil. These are things that aren't talked about today. But you get a person then that becomes very popular in American politics in the 90s, right after Reagan, named Bill Clinton, and he puts us right back on the track to this kind of stuff being heralded again. What the man was trying to tell us is that this doesn't happen on accident. Take the ability they had in the 1970s and 80s and times it by 1,000,000 with the ability that people that are anti-Christian, anti-American have to promote this mass psychosis on a people. Are we a demoralized country? How many people do you think are like really patriotic? America's the best. Constant criticism of America. Are we stable? We're about as unstable as we've been politically. Very divided. 2020, city's on fire. Crisis. Whether you believe in conspiracy that they manufacture the crises is irrelevant. The fact that they use the crises. There are some that think that the crises are manufactured. I don't know if they're right or wrong, but I do know that they use crises. COVID-19, what a convenient crisis to use to implement the fear, to implement these ideas. And then how are we going to go back? And then once you do it, hello, have you heard this phrase? Did you hear this phrase 2 years ago? Get used to the new, come on, you heard the phrase. New what? Normal. Are you out there? Is anybody listening? If you're not equipped with the knowledge to know what the enemy's up against, how you defeat the enemy, spiritually and materially. That guy's real. He was there sounding the alarm to the American people. Whatever happened to him individually, I don't know, that made him flip. But he sounded the alarm 40 years ago. And again, they play the long game. They believe that eventually, which we'll talk about starting tomorrow, well, maybe Thursday, they believe eventually this society will reach this communist utopian state, even if it takes hundreds of years. that as they keep cycling one generation after another, they'll eventually get there. Obviously, we're closer to that point than we were 100 years ago in America. Obviously, we're closer to that point than we were 70 years ago in America. But hope is not lost. He said it's going to take a generation. Who's the generation going to be? And if it's not the people that are sitting in front of me now, who else would it be? You think they're getting this up the street? I don't care how many Christian teachers are in the public school. You think they're getting taught this truth? They're not. So if you are not going to be if you're not, as Pastor Kyle says, going to be the ones that turn the world upside down or make it upside right, however you want to look at it, who is? Or are you just going to conform? Because if you're not aware of it and you're not putting on the armor, you're going to conform to the pattern of this world. Pun intended. Worldview is a pattern of ideas, behaviors. And if you're not aware of it, if you're not put on the belt of truth, then you're going to succumb to it. I'm in the Lord's army, yes, sir. Questions, comments? So John asked at the end of class, first period, while he was still hanging out, like how did they do it? Because he doesn't really get into how they did it. Like, you get a group of people that were already, whether you want to call them the hippie generation, whatever they were, the baby boomers that were going against the man anyway, rebellious, that was already happening in our society. And then you start to bring in these ideas into the college classroom. You have a lot of American educators that have this fondness for Europe, and Europe started this process long before, right after World War II, and America should be more like Europe. That played into it. And we'll bring that knowledge, that kind of progressive thinking into American classrooms. They already had fertile soil. We learned in U.S. history about this idea of progressivism. There was fertile soil already to get people's minds manipulated. Yeah.
I read Ronald Reagan's The Time for Choosing.
Yeah. Awesome. That's a great speech. And that was 64. That was 60 years ago.
World history. You said you were going to put those South American capitals
I didn't put
in
one
the
right.
class.
I better do that today. I'll put them up in class today too.
Okay. I just know you said you were going to put them on the classroom, and
Sorry.
I just asked you. That's okay. If we're going to do a quiz on the 14th, we need to get
Yes.
it's done yet.